Today's video is from a couple weeks ago when I went up to Maryland to visit one of my sailing heroes, Matt Rutherford. And Matt's probably most well known for his single-handed, non-stop world record-setting trip around the Americas, including going through the Northwest Passage. That trip was super inspiring to me when I heard about it, because not only was it probably one of the most difficult feats in sailing ever, he did it on a tiny little boat with a minuscule budget, which is I think it's pretty cool. It was really great to get to share a few drinks with Matt and talk sailing, and he also showed me around his new big boat project. He's kind of gone the other direction. He's outfitting a large sailboat to do research in the Arctic, which I think is a really interesting concept. So here's the interview. In the boatyard. This massive boat. Whoa. I'm here with Matt Rutherford, the legendary single-handed sailor on the around the Americas Passage. Mm-hmm. So that was from Chesapeake through the Northwest Passage and around South America.
So yeah, you leave out of the Chesapeake Bay, you sail north between Canada and Greenland, you turn left, sail through the Northwest Passage, around the state of Alaska, down the Pacific, around Cape Horn, and back to Annapolis. It is just that simple, folks. So I tried to do on the system, but my water maker broke early on, but I didn't get much crap.
And it was a hand pump.
I had to hand pump a water maker about 1,500 times a day, and over 309 days I did collect some rainwater and some ice in the Arctic, but I pumped it at least 270 days, which means I pumped it over 415,000 times.
Holy smokes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the Northwest Passage specifically, I'm curious, what is the sleep schedule out there? Because you're far from anything, but there's lots of stuff you can run into, right?
Yeah, so single-handing in the Arctic is the hardest sailing I've ever done. I thought it was much more difficult. I mean, Cape Horn obviously has a lot of issues, but outside of big storms, it's not like you have to deal with ice at the same level. So, I found it to be the most difficult part of that entire trip. And the problem is you're surrounded by fog. I didn't have a radar. I would have loved to have had a radar. I would have loved to have had a Valiant 42, but sometimes you got to make do with what you got.
Well, what did you have?
I had a 27-foot Alban Vega, 1971 27-foot Alban Vega.
That's great.
So the ice just kind of pops out of the fog, and maybe it's blowing 20 or 30 or whatever's blowing up there. And so you just have to stand in the cockpit with your hand on the tiller for, I would do 50 hours on, 6 hours off. For as long as I could, and so it's just and you might heave too if you get a little break in the fog or something, and you see okay, this iceberg's here, I think I can get some rest, but you'd end up resting for whatever it would be, 45 minutes or half hour. You'd set an alarm, you'd get up, and all the icebergs are in different places.
Did you ever hit anything?
No, luckily, but I thought about it. I mean I had to tack hard for several days in the ice and in the fog, and you're wondering if you're going to slam into a berg. And then when the fog finally lifted, it lifted very quickly after about the third day of that. And I looked around and I was surrounded. I had 7 icebergs all around me. And I was just like, oh shit, I've been tacking through bergs for 3 days without knowing what's where, basically. It's extremely difficult. And during that trip around the Americas, or any single-handing I've ever done, that's the only time where I really wish there was somebody there, just so I could go and get some rest. Yeah. But that was one of the hard. I think I lost about 40 pounds going through it. Because sleep deprivation, you burn a lot of calories, and I was also early on in the trip, I was probably over rationing.
Gotcha.
And so I had quite a bit of food at the end, the last couple months.
How has your meal preparation, or what you do for food, evolved over your kind of careers?
I did it the same for a while, and you crossed the Atlantic single-handed this last year, and I imagine you probably do pastas and soups and canned foods and things. Yeah. So when
powdered mashed potatoes, cans and stuff.
Yeah, and so when I did my first 2 single-handed transatlantics on a 32-foot Pearson before that trip around the Americas, I was very similar. You bring canned stuff and refried beans and sort of stuff along those lines. Trip around the Americas, I had 700 pounds of freeze-dried food. There's a company out in Utah that makes freeze-dried, and they have these packages. It's a Mormon company, and I guess it's part of Mormon philosophy to have a year's worth of food in your basement for the apocalypse or whatever it is. And so this company sold these packages, 1-year packages, 5-year packages. And I asked them, well, has anybody ever lived exclusively off your food for a year? And they're like, no. And I said, well, look, I'll be your guinea pig so you can tell people that it works. and I didn't get scurvy. So I ended up getting a year package, like you'd put in your basement or whatever. And
what was in it?
A little of everything, freeze dried. They freeze dry everything. The company was called Shelf Reliance. I think the brand is a Thrive, I think. But they make everything. So some stuff was great. Freeze dried mango, that's great. They had something called sausage crumbles, which was really good. You could eat it freeze dried. They had butter powder, which is the best ever. Butter powder. You literally, if you take butter and freeze dry it, it turns to powder. So you get like a scoop of it, you put it in whatever, and it becomes butter again. I love butter powder. So, and of course, I ran out of it. I ran out of everything, basically.
You go through all the good stuff first.
But yeah, so it's just freeze-dried. Nice thing about freeze-dried, instead of dehydrated beans, you have to boil them for like 20 minutes to bring them back to life. Freeze-dried take about 3 to 5 minutes. So everything comes back very quickly. Gotcha. You don't use as much fuel in the process. You can stick it in cold water and wait long enough, it will rehydrate.
Would you go that route again if for that type of passage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd absolutely. Freeze-dried food is extremely healthy, and it's I would suggest eating a 1-a-day vitamin. I did eat a 1-a-day vitamin during the trip just because I didn't want to get scurvy. I mean, that was basically my fear. But yeah, I would definitely. And then so when we did in 2013, I started this nonprofit Ocean Research Project. We mapped out the eastern side of the North Atlantic garbage patch, which hadn't been mapped. We were there for 70 days, and we lived off of freeze-dried food once again. In 2014, sailed from San Francisco to Yokohama, Japan on a 29-foot Harbor 29, the one and only ever made, which is a stripped-down day sailor. Gotcha. And that was a 64-day passage. It was the same thing, freeze-dried food, a manual water maker, pump, same thing. Probably pumped it about 80,000 times, I think. And we, those little gimbaled stoves you screw a 1-pound tank into the bottom of? Yes. That was my kitchen. It was just, you mount it on the wall, you screw a tank in, you got one pot.
Yep,
and
that's what I'm using.
Yeah, that's how we got from San Francisco to Japan. So I did the freeze-dried thing for many passages after that. And then also 2015, 16 in the Arctic, we were doing some work with NASA, mapping uncharted areas and looking for this warmer water column that eats glaciers from underneath. And we had some freeze-dried. So gotcha. I will bring some freeze-dried on this trip, but it isn't cheap. I mean, honestly, freeze-dried is a little bit, it's more expensive. Like you can get a bag of rice and a bag of beans and a bag, and this, bulk pasta or something like that. It's not very expensive.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think it's a great way to go.
Yeah, I haven't really tried any of that, so that's super cool.
And it lasts forever. It lasts like 20 years if you don't open it.
Gotcha. So now,
sure. So when I got back from the single-handed circumnavigation of the Americas, I created this nonprofit Ocean Research Project with the idea being that a sailboat is a much cheaper and much more environmentally friendly data collection platform. So traditional research vessels operate at about $30,000 a day. We operate at about $3,000 a day. So we're 10% of the cost. Research vessel can burn between 2,000 and 3,000 gallons of diesel a day. We'll be lucky to burn that in the entire trip. So we can burn about 1% of the diesel that they burn. So the technologies needed to do research become less power hungry, become smaller, just like computers and smartphones and everything else. We can do research on a boat like this 65-foot Bruce Roberts. We could never have done 20 years ago. You can imagine 20 years from now, in particular, when you integrate the fully autonomous aerial and underwater data collecting robots, the drones in the air, the underwater vehicles, this is the future of research. It's going to be these autonomous technologies. Yeah. This is a great cost-effective, environmentally friendly support platform for those. And it's also blending. I mean, how can you get much more old school than sailing? You know, I mean, that's some super old school stuff. And you're blending it with like the most high-end autonomous technologies. And so they come together very well. And, I'm passionate about sailing, and I want to see sailboats have a place in the professional world, not just a pleasure craft, but actually a professional platform.
Very cool. And this is your second boat you did for that project?
The first boat was a 42-foot Calvin Gazelle. You can get a little B-roll of a picture in there. I got a picture of it hanging up in the shower room.
Great.
But that's the one that we had in the Atlantic in 2013, or when we were up in the Arctic, 2015, 16. It was an okay boat. I mean, it was kind of rusted out and rotten wood. I mean, it needed a lot of work done to it. I didn't have much money when I got it. But eventually, you can only have 4 people on that boat.
Oh, really?
For any given time.
Okay.
And it, you know, had 60 gallons of water storage, 80 gallons of diesel storage. I added some extra diesel, but still, this boat has 800 gallons of diesel storage. I can have 9 people. I can have half a dozen scientists, and you know, we can basically, with this pilot house, you know, we'll put a back on it. We'll pipe heat into it, so it'll be a nice warm in here. So yeah, it's going to be a go anywhere boat, much more capable than what we had. Although, you know, we definitely used the hell out of our last boat.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like on that boat, you've learned a lot. Like.
Yeah. It was.
What you want in a research vessel.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a you know, this is the 7th boat that I've done a big refit to. So you kind of learn a little bit with every boat as you go on.
Yeah.
And
it's like the culmination of all those.
Yeah, exactly. And you make mistakes, because I made mistakes on
Yeah.
every one of them. You buy shit and you're like, God, man, what did I do that for? Why did I do this or whatever? Or I wish I had that, you know. And so yeah, I basically have been able to condense down these 6 previous boats that I've had to do major refits on all of them, and kind of make this exactly the way I want it. And because the boat was never finished, the boat was built in 2000. The guy wanted to finish it himself. He never did. It was professionally built, the hull, but the guy made about 3 years worth of effort, got a little bit done, but not much, and then he basically abandoned it. So it sat for about 18 years with nobody doing nothing to it. And then I got my hands on it about 3 years ago and just been whacking away. And fundraising, of course, which you can make a donation at oceanresearchproject.org.
Put that in the description.
Yeah, there you go. So, but yeah, so it's, and fundraising is its own nightmare, of course, and then all the boat work and then all the other juggling, all the elements of it. But we're getting there. I've got to have the boat in the water in the end of April, and it's mid-February, so I don't got much time.
The race is on.
And it's like this boat is torn apart in every place you can imagine.
It's come a long way.
And yeah, it's coming. And then I've got to sail off to Greenland in May to do a large-scale research expedition, go map a bunch of uncharted areas, try not to hit rocks, because there's rocks hiding all over the place. You don't know where they are because it's uncharted. And doing a bunch of research related to the glaciers and the health of plankton.
I think that was great. Thank you for talking with me. And also, you have the podcast.
Yes.
I'd recommend checking that out.
Yeah,
Either
single-handed
or this type of ocean research stuff.
Yeah, Single-Handed Sailing Podcast is out there, an episode a week of me just rambling about whatever. And then there will be YouTube videos we'll be making this year of the expedition. We'll have a camera guy along. He'll film whatever it's basically going to be whatever it is. The story will tell itself, more or less. And yeah, we'll try to drum up some more funding and support for the organization.
So this is the wood shop, or
Yeah.
every kind of do some finishing.
This is it. This is the wood shop.
Oh, these are the
Those are
spreaders
for that mast.
very cool.
It needs to get a little bit of sanding, and this is the sauna, of course.
That's awesome.
And yeah, we got to get some rocks in it. We can run it off the inverter, and we'll put a folding chair in the shower so then people can sweat in the shower and rinse it off. And yeah, so you can install a basic hydronic heater connected to your engine. You can get it from Summit Racing for $160. And anytime your engine is hot, you pull heat off your engine for free and just dump it into your cabin. So if you're sailing cold and now you have an electric engine. So
yeah, I guess I can't use it. I guess I can't use
Anybody
it.
with a diesel,
Right,
it's
right.
a great, inexpensive way to heat your boat while motoring. So
Okay.
obviously it doesn't help if you're not motoring.
Yeah, it's only
But it's a good way to warm the cabin up.
Yeah.
At least you start off warm. Is one of the heads. We just plumbed this. Oh, nice. We just plumbed that like
running water.
2 days ago. In the last 48 hours we've been able to do that. And I gotta fix the heater. But the heater will have a basically. Yeah, it's a drip pod. Now we got that one going back there, but this little guy will basically turn this into a dryer. So it's a big hanging locker, and it's very expensive and hard to do.
What skeletons do you have in that closet?
A whole bunch. And it's very hard to do laundry because it's not the washing but the drying. So anyways, we pipe the heat into here. There's a little fan, blows it in here. So if you put your foul weather gear in there when it's wet or whatever wet clothes, it'll just dry it out. So you can have warm foulies for your wash.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is the crew quarters, which is a total wreck. But and then there's the engine room. So I got a DC generator, so it's kind of it's what came with the boat. It's kind of weird. It's a single cylinder Kubota, and so I got a big maker, coffee pot, all that, kind of getting ready for expedition. The biggest stove I could possibly find, and get a little hood going, to the fridge. Figured it would save some time and energy. the other one of these guys.
Ooh,
Yeah, pretty much.
look at this fire.
Yeah, Nicole's done a good job of getting 1 million people on the boat. That ladder that you see sitting up there on the ground will end up going right here. And that little thing, a big white thing that was in the pilot house, it gets like big Lexan panels and it replaces this thing. Because this thing's just that fun. So everything ties into everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you go like full Victron and use all their crap, they'll talk to each other. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare to program them though. It's like you got to buy extra.
How many bunks? Spaces do you
9 if you include that one.
Okay.
So we got 8 singles and this one. But once we get to Greenland, I'll probably give it up for the science. You got an old scientist coming.
Sure.
So you're talking like
the
9
pressure to
people
get-
for a
yeah.
lot of. Yeah, I mean,
Right,
not
too.
just that. You're talking about 9.
Yeah.
9 humans eating and pooping and showering and doing all the things they're doing.
Yeah.
Sitting and whatever else. So yeah, it's just a lot.
Sitting.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be enough seats though, right?
Yeah, there'll be a table where you're standing.
Are you having to like convince like people maybe are accustomed to a traditional research vessel?
Well,
that
that's
this is going to be
right. Yeah. So the first mate's a guy who worked on traditional research vessels, but also
Yeah.
sailed a bit. So he knows what he's getting into. The hydrographers could be a little concerned, but because for 28 days we're mapping some uncharted areas, and so we have to bring some hydrographers in because we're working with the Seabed 2030, and we're borrowing this $300,000 multi-beam sonar, and we have to have what they call a JEBCO authorized hydrographer. This just means they're a licensed hydrographer.
okay.
So we'll have 2 of them coming in. One of them we're fine with, the other one's a mystery. So that's the one person that's like, I keep telling the other guy, like, make sure they know this is like, there's no salad bar. They're not getting their own cabin. Like, they're gonna be crammed in there. That's the science quarters. Which,
They are going to be pleasantly
can
surprised.
you look in that direction for me for a minute? Because there's no light. There you go. You see in there. So it's just a bunch of single birds. They're comfortable back there, but it's you don't want to hang. I mean, you just go to bed. I mean, that's this is where you store your crap, and this is where you sleep, and maybe you read a book in bed. But outside of that, it's not a hangout spot, to say the least. The batteries. I put this together right before he showed up. Doing a fun project.
Yeah.
That's
You gotta do
gonna-
those every once in a while.
yeah. So this is the batteries, 2 rows of 8, and 16 total.
Okay.
So it's a shit ton.
Wow, that's a lot.
Shit ton of lithium.
I guess you need it for.
Yeah, all the
run
science stuff.
science
I mean, you got all sorts. They got that. A -80 freezer is going to take 10 amps by itself, and then you got all sorts of flow-through sensors that are going to be in there. So none of it's mounted yet. /lab.
Yeah.
But that's
I didn't get
that's
that.
the DC pump for the water maker. That big fucking thing right there. Takes.
That's the motor for it.
Yeah. So if you were to run it on 12 volts, it would be 120 amps. Like
Is that bigger than your boat motor?
Which one?
it might be.
It's water.
Yeah,
It's getting bigger.
it
Than
is.
your boat.
It is. That's
Yeah.
okay.
That's
That's why I'm
serious
2 months late getting down here for the season.
So we got we'll put the control panels for the water maker. We got here's one of them.
Okay.
But they'll go in here. There's a couple of slots, and there's little heaters throughout the boat. That's what we're doing right now. That's what all the red stuff is running. Well, the covered stuff. We're running heaters everywhere. I put the biggest tool chest I could fit down that hatch right there. I had like a
you
quarter-inch
just run that guy in.
play.
Yeah.
But and then you can lock it so they don't go flying open. So the chaos comes down a little bit in here. Nicole will start mounting all sorts of tubes and flow through things and sensors and computer
Laboratory.
screens. And she'll turn it into a lab.
Wish you had this on your boat.
I can drive up
You're
to that
gonna be
one,
doing a
too.
whole lot of fun with
That's
this
not a
animal
problem.
going forward.
Yeah, but I'm afraid,
True.
you get up there and
But it would be nice when I
Just
was.
for the ambiance.
I used
Same
that
thing will
diesel
happen.
heater to the end of its life.
or
You killed it.
get some.
Yeah, so actually when I got to Sweden, I'm just walking a little length of the map.
Yeah, and we'll walk down there, and at least we know we got what we need. I need to attach it down there, but.
So a huge thanks to Matt for showing us around that boat. I thought it was really cool. Some of those features he put in the boat I think were really neat, like the like the heater that pumped the warm air into the closet for drying clothes off, and having the sauna, and then just like the engine room was awesome, all the places for equipment and the workshop. Although on the other side, I don't really envy all the work he's having to do to get that boat ready to go. It just seems like a really overwhelming project. He should be getting pretty close to putting it in the water though, so it'd be cool to see his videos once he starts posting those. I'll put the link to his YouTube channel up here. And the links to his sites are in the description too. I guess in my next video will be just kind of goofing around on some paddle boards and working on like windsurfing and I don't know, just some stuff like that until the end of the month when I'm going to be flying back over to Sweden. And then we'll sail around northern Europe and then down to the Mediterranean. That's kind of the rough plan for the year. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.